our fiscal discussion at this point in time, and we, along with the Governor of the Central Bank, we stand firm in terms of the targets that we have in the economy, whether it's our FX reserves or its other commitments that we have made to international institutions for this fiscal year. As far as the second and third order impact is concerned, it's a direct function of the duration and the intensity of the conflict. And therefore, उसमें भी हमने जो सिनारियो एनालिसिस है वो बिल्कुल हम कर रहे हैं, और इसमें जो इस वक्त NCMC which is working पाकिस्तान, ये सिर्फ किताबी बातें नहीं हैं कि जो रोबस्ट कैपिटल मार्केट्स हैं, they are engines of sustainable growth, whether it's in the context of mobilizing savings, channeling capital, enabling risk sharing, and even more importantly, accessing long-term financing, whether those are startups or infrastructure projects. देखिए, ये मैं I would take it back into the discussion and the overview with respect to the conflict, because 2020 hindsight is a wonderful thing. तो इस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट से पिछले 2 महीने में हमने क्या चीज़ें सीखी हैं जो हमें करना चाहिए था और अब इंशाल्लाह आगे करेंगे. 1, commercial reserves are not good enough. Any country has to build strategic reserves. Number 2, we are on our way, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, whether it's hydro, but we have to accelerate our journey towards renewables. And we will do every possible thing to make financing available to accelerate our journey towards renewables. And that's where capital markets again comes in. And the third thing I would say is indigenous. अपने आप पर rely करना सीखें. Yes, we have our bilateral partners, we have our multilateral partners, but ultimately, और इसका एक एग्जाम्पल मैं आपको ये देता हूँ कि 22 का जब फ्लड आया, it was a devastating flood. It affected one river and essentially one province or maybe part of the second province. And we had to go for international appeal right away. Geneva हम पहुँचे, pledges ली, उसमें से कुछ आया, कुछ नहीं आया. 25 flooding. Unfortunately, it was more intense than 22. 3 rivers, and almost the entire Pakistan got affected. और उसमें बड़ा उस वक्त था कि क्यों international appeal पे जाए? If we have the fiscal buffer available, if we have the resources available here in terms of rescue and relief, and then into reconstruction, rehabilitation, we don't need to rely on any other country or any other multilateral institution. That is the power that जब हम बात करते हैं पाकिस्तान फर्स्ट की, जब हम बात करते हैं हमारी डिप्लोमेसी की, उसी में जो बात होती है कि जी national security is energy security and therefore economic security. That is the power of macroeconomic stability, ladies and gentlemen. जब हम बात करते हैं कि macro stability आ गई है, growth क्यों नहीं आ रही, तो इसका क्या फायदा है? That is basic hygiene. Whether it's foreign investors, local investors, or when we get into these exogenous shocks, that's where the fiscal buffers and the macro stability comes in, and inshallah, we are very focused. More and more and more, we are going to be focused on our indigenous capital raising, indigenous resourcing to fund what we need to do as part of national security. And therefore, the capital markets are going to play a very important role. देखिए, timing is critical. Climate है, जब मैंने उसकी बात कर ली है, technology है, demographic forces. The reality is there are too many promising projects जो traditional bank lending की वजह से उसमें या insufficiency है या उसकी suitability नहीं है, and therefore we need to diversify away. I was told कि मैंने कितने banks के लिए काम किया है, but we have to diversify away from the concentration that we have on the banking sector, including the government, including the private sector. Government का तो ये कहा जाता है कि we are crowding out the private sector. So therefore, we have to go into the sukuks and the capital markets and everything that we're trying to do. But for the private sector, I think that's also going to be very important. दूसरा जो मैंने पॉइंट कहा कि इक्विटी की बात की, डॉक्टर सिद्धू ने भी उसकी बात की, उसमें कोई शक की गुंजाइश नहीं है कि notwithstanding the volatility that we have seen, primarily because of the conflict over the last 4 to 6 weeks, because ये बड़ी uncertain situation है, there is risk off, there is risk on, and then within the same day there is risk off and risk on, depending on who tweets and who says what, etc. तो इसलिए वो volatility जो है वो अपनी जगह बरकरार है, लेकिन for me, you know, the underlying pillars and the fundamental factors which are coming through. So from what I understand on equity front, 2,20,000 से ज़्यादा investors have entered the market over the last 2 years, and these are led by youth, which is essentially Gen Z, tech and digital access. इसी तरह जो अप्रैल का नंबर है, मैंने बात की मैक्रो इंडिसेस पे कि रेमिटेंसेस कहाँ हैं, आरडीए फ्लोज कहाँ हैं, एक्सेट्रा, बट अगर सिर्फ अप्रैल में आप देखें जहाँ वॉलेटिलिटी स्टॉक मार्केट की बहुत ज़्यादा रही है, तो अगेन फ्रॉम व्हाट आई अंडरस्टैंड दैट 24,000 न्यू इन्वेस्टर्स हैव एंटर्ड द मार्केट इन अप्रैल. दिस इज हाईएस्ट एवर इन एनी गिवन मंथ. सो आई थिंक फ्रॉम द इक्विटी साइड we are indeed moving in the right direction. On the debt capital market side, from my perspective, we've actually gone into a reverse gear. मैं 2000 इन्होंने बात की 2001 में जब मैं यहाँ इवन एमरो के साथ एम्प्लॉयमेंट में था, at that point in time, WAPDA had gone into mini bonds, into the retail investor base, और उसके बाद ऐसा रिवर्स गियर लगा कि हमने DCM को वापस उठते देखा ही नहीं इस और उसमें obviously the banks played an important role, but this is something which we have to, because from my perspective this is an and discussion, this is not an and or discussion, and therefore the focus that we need to have on the corporate bond market and how we take it forward, और उसमें जो आपकी तरफ से regulations हैं, ease of doing business है, Ministry of Finance की तरफ से अगर कोई taxation related या FDR related avenues हैं, we have to again collectively figure out how we get this DCM going as we move forward. Now, जो अभी आपने बात की है, the promotion of the investor education, financial literacy, market participation, the various campaigns, to me this is a very, very important building block. लेकिन इसमें मेरी आपसे दरख्वास्त ये होगी कि आप इसको, आप 6 साल से इस इदारे के साथ मुंसलिक, we have to now move towards Gen Z and move towards youth and what they need and what they figure out is the way forward in terms of the various campaigns, etc., right? Because अभी जो 2012 से हमने सीखा है 40 million crypto users, right? And how we want to move forward in terms of use cases on the tokenization side, in terms of licenses of the exchanges, etc. But this is being led by Gen Z. This is being led by the youth of this country. Actually, the government was behind the curve.